The morning of the great ascent arrived with clear skies and gentle winds. Sarah stood at the base of the spiral tower, looking up at the structure that twisted into the purple sky above. 400 meters of carefully carved stone, with platforms every 50 meters. Tradition said the tower represented the journey from ignorance to enlightenment. Climbers were meant to reflect on their lives as they ascended, facing their fears and limitations. Sarah wondered what she was supposed to learn from this climb. How to hold back, how to fit into a world where she did not belong, how to make people less afraid of her. Around her a crowd had gathered, not just students this time but from all over the region. News of the challenge had spread. Screens were set up for those who could not attend in person. This was no longer just about Sarah and Orr. It had become a cultural moment, a test of human relations. Lee approached carrying climbing gear. Light rope, safety clips, a pack with supplies, the traditional equipment for the ascent. "You do not have to do this," Lee said quietly. "Orr's challenge was unfair. No one would blame you for withdrawing." "Yes, they would," Sarah said. "And anyway, I gave my word. I'm seeing this through." She looked at the group of climbers gathering nearby, or stood among them, wearing special climbing robes. There were 10 other, all volunteers for the group ascent. They ranged from young students to older academics. Each one had their own reason for attempting the tower. Professor stood on a raised platform, addressing the crowd through amplification devices. "The Great Ascent is a sacred tradition. Today, we honor that tradition with a mixed-species climbing party. May they find wisdom in the climb, understanding in the challenge, and growth in the journey." The crowd responded with a traditional phrase in their language. The translation came through Sarah's device as "upward toward truth." The climb began. The first 50 meters were relatively easy. Wide steps spiraled around the tower's exterior, each one carved with symbols and prayers. The climbers moved steadily, their movements graceful even under the strain. Sarah stayed at the back of the group, setting her pace to match theirs. Every instinct told her to rush ahead, to bound up the steps 3 at a time. She forced herself to move slowly, carefully, one step after another. Lee climbed beside her, occasionally offering words of encouragement to the group, or led from the front, his pace aggressive, trying to prove something. Sarah was not sure what. At the first platform, 50 meters up, the group paused to rest. Several climbers were already breathing hard. They drank water, ate energy supplements, and checked their equipment. Sarah barely felt winded. She could have sprinted up those steps, but she sat with the others, pretending to rest, making conversation. "How do you find the climb, cadet?" one of the older academics asked. His name was a professor of ancient history. "Beautiful," Sarah said honestly. "The carvings on the steps tell stories. I wish I could read them." His expression brightened. "They tell of our ancestors' first attempt to reach the sky. Each generation climbed higher, built taller, until finally we achieved. The tower represents that journey." "We have similar stories on Earth," Sarah said, "about reaching for the stars, about pushing beyond our limits." "But you reached the stars through force," or interrupted from across the platform. "Through powerful rockets that tear through atmospheres. Violence is in your nature." Sarah kept her voice calm. "Is a flower violent when it breaks through soil? Is a bird violent when it pushes against air to fly? Force isn't the same as violence. Sometimes force is just necessary." Or looked like he wanted to argue more but raised a hand. "Save your energy for climbing, young one. Philosophy can wait until the summit." The second section was steeper. The steps became narrower, the spiral. The climbers used the safety ropes now, clipping onto anchors built into the tower wall. Sarah did the same, though she did not really need them. The fall would not hurt her, not with this gravity, but refusing the ropes would be another sign of her difference. So she clipped in and climbed. At the 100-meter platform, 2 of the younger climbers were struggling. Their breathing was labored, their movements shaky. Sarah watched them carefully, ready to help if needed. One of them, a female student named Aura, slipped on a step. Her safety clip caught her, but she cried out in pain as her arm twisted at a bad angle. Sarah moved without thinking. She dropped her pack, covered the distance between them in 2 long strides, and caught Aura before the student could fall further. The movement was fast, too fast. The other climbers froze, watching. "I've got you," Sarah said gently, helping Aura regain her footing. "Can you stand?" Aura nodded, tears in her large eyes. "My arm, I think I hurt it." Sarah examined the arm carefully. Not broken, probably just strained. She pulled out her first aid kit and made a simple sling. "This should help, but maybe you should go back down." "No," Aura said stubbornly. "I want to reach the summit. I trained for this." Sarah looked at Lee, who had climbed back down to check on them. "Can she make it?" "Possible," Lee said, "but difficult. The next section is the hardest." "Then we'll help her," Sarah said. She looked at the rest of the group. "All of us together." Or started to object, then stopped. He looked at Aura, at her determined face, and nodded reluctantly. "Together." The climb continued. Sarah stayed close to Aura, ready to catch her if she slipped again. The young's pace was slow, each step painful, but she kept moving. Other climbers helped too, offering words of encouragement, sharing their supplies, adjusting the rope system to give her extra support. At the 200-meter platform, they stopped for a longer rest. Aura was exhausted but still determined, or sat alone at the edge of the platform, staring down at the ground far below. Sarah walked over to him. "You're a good climber," she said. He replied bitterly. Sarah sat down beside him, making sure to move slowly. "Why did you challenge me, really?" Or was quiet for a long moment. "Because I'm afraid," he finally said. "When I see what you can do, I see my own weakness. Our species spent millions of years evolving on this gentle world. We're fragile, delicate. And now we meet species from death worlds, species with strength we can never match, and I wonder what place we have in the galaxy. What value do we bring?" Sarah thought about her answer carefully. "On Earth, we have an old saying. The strongest tree is not always the one that survives the storm. Sometimes it's the one that bends without breaking. You call yourselves fragile, but you've built a civilization based on art, philosophy, and science. Your medical technology is centuries ahead of ours. Your understanding of quantum mechanics makes our best physicists look like children. You've achieved peace across your entire planet. That's not weakness. That's strength of a different kind." "Pretty words," Orr said. "But what happens when strength meets strength? Violence, conquest, history proves this." "Human history has violence, yes," Sarah admitted. "But also cooperation. We learned that working together makes us all stronger. The community exists because different strengths complement each other. You need us for heavy labor in high gravity. We need you for delicate precision work. Neither is better. Both are necessary." Or turned to look at her. "You really believe that?" "I wouldn't be here if I didn't," Sarah said. The climb resumed. The third section was the steepest yet. Here, the steps were replaced by handholds carved into the rock. Climbers had to pull themselves up, using their arms and legs together. This was the true test. For Sarah, it was like climbing a ladder at summer camp. But she climbed at the group's pace. She used the handholds even though she could have jumped from platform to platform. She clipped her safety rope even though she did not need it. And when other climbers struggled, she was there to help, offering a hand to pull someone up, securing a rope, calling out encouragement. At the 300-meter platform, half the original group had turned back. Only 6 remained, including Sarah, Lee, Aura, and one other student. They were tired, sore, but determined. "One more section," said, breathing hard. 100 meters to enlightenment. They rested longer this time. The wind was stronger up here, tugging at their clothes and equipment. The view was incredible. Sarah could see across the entire region, see the campus spread out below like a toy model, see the curve of the horizon in the distance. The final section was the longest. 100 meters of steady climbing, no platforms to rest on until the summit. The handholds were smaller here, worn smooth by centuries of climbers. The moved with extreme care, each handhold tested before trusting it with their weight. Halfway up, disaster struck. His handhold broke. The old professor fell backward with a cry of surprise. His safety rope caught him, but the momentum swung him into the tower wall. Hard, too hard. Sarah reacted instantly. She launched herself down the tower, covering 10 meters in a single leap, reaching before his second swing could slam him into the wall again. She caught him in midair, rotated to take the impact herself, and landed on a small ledge 5 meters below. The stone beneath her feet cracked from the force, but held. For a moment there was only silence, then's voice shaky and weak. "Did you just fly?" "Jumped," Sarah corrected, checking him for injuries. Blood ran from a cut on his forehead. His right leg was bent wrong. "Your leg is broken. We need to get you down." "No," said, "the summit so close." "You're injured," Sarah insisted. "Then carry me," the old professor said. "Please. I've attempted this climb 5 times in my life. Never reached the top. This is my last chance." Sarah looked up at the other climbers who had stopped to watch. Lee was already rappelling down to help, or stood frozen, staring at Sarah with an expression she could not read. "It's too dangerous," Sarah said. "Life is dangerous," countered, "especially for old fools with dreams, please." Sarah looked at his face, saw the desperation there, the need to complete something important. She understood that need. "Okay," she said, "hold on tight." She secured to her back with climbing ropes, making sure he was stable. Then she began to climb, one-handed because her other arm supported the professor, slow and steady because any mistake could hurt him. The weight barely registered to her muscles, but the responsibility pressed down like a physical force. The other climbers watched from above. Some looked terrified, some looked amazed or looked thoughtful. Sarah climbed, hand over hand, foothold to foothold, breathed heavily against her back, whispering words she could not understand. Prayers, maybe, or just thoughts spoken aloud. 50 meters, 40, 30. Her muscles began to tire, not from the weight or the climbing, but from the constant control required. Every movement had to be precise. Too much force would send them flying. Too little would mean they fell. 20 meters, 10. The summit was close now. She could see the final platform, carved with elaborate designs. The other climbers had reached it, were looking down at her, reaching out their hands to help. 5 meters. Sarah's foot slipped, just for a second, but it was enough. She swung out from the tower, crying out in alarm. For a heartbeat, Sarah thought they would fall. Then her other hand caught a hold, her core muscles engaged, and she pulled them back to the wall. 2 meters. Hands reached down, Lee and or together, grabbing for, helping pull him onto the summit platform. Then hands for Sarah, pulling her up, helping her over the edge. She collapsed on the summit platform, breathing hard, not from physical exhaustion but from the emotional strain. Lay beside her, laughing and crying at the same time. "We made it," the old professor said. "Stars and light, we made it." Sarah sat up slowly. Around her, the remaining climbers were all staring at her. She waited for the fear to appear in their eyes again, for them to back away from the dangerous human. Instead, or stepped forward. He extended his hand to her in the human gesture she had taught them. She took it, and he helped her to her feet. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for showing me what strength really means." Sarah looked at him, confused. "I thought strength was about dominance," or continued, "about proving superiority. But watching you climb, watching you help us, watching you save, I understand now. True strength is about choosing to help when you could choose to harm, about going slow when you could go fast, about carrying others when you could leave them behind." He turned to address the group. "I challenged Cadet to prove she was dangerous. Instead, she proved she is exactly what humanity claims to be. Powerful, yes, but more importantly, kind." Aura stepped forward, cradling her injured arm. "You saved me. You saved Professor. You could have raced to the summit and shown us all how weak we are. Instead, you stayed with us. You helped us. You're not a demon, you're a friend." Sarah felt tears in her eyes. She tried to blink them away, but they came anyway. "Thank you," she managed to say. "That means more than you know." They stayed on the summit for an hour, resting, talking, watching the sun move across the sky. Medical drones arrived to take down to treatment. He insisted on recording his summit achievement first, his face beaming despite the pain. When it was time to descend, the group moved together, slowly, carefully, helping each other over difficult spots. Sarah stayed in the middle of the group this time, not at the back, or climbed beside her, asking questions about Earth, about human culture, about what it was like to grow up on a death world. At the base of the tower, a crowd waited. Word had spread about rescue, about the group summit, about the human who could have proved her superiority but chose to prove her friendship instead. Professor approached as they reached the ground. "Cadet, the administration has reviewed the footage from the climb. Your actions were brave, selfless, and exactly what this exchange program was meant to foster. We would be honored if you would continue your studies here." Sarah smiled. "I'd like that." Lee came to stand beside her. "I have a request. Would you be willing to co-author a paper with me about human kinesthetics and how it could improve our designs? We have much to learn from your physiology." "I'd be happy to," Sarah said, "as long as you'll help me learn to read those tower inscriptions. I want to know all the stories." In the days that followed, things changed on campus. Students still watched Sarah as she walked by, but the fear was gone, replaced by curiosity. Some even asked if they could train with her, wanting to understand human exercise routines. She started teaching a class on basic Earth physics, showing how gravity shaped everything from sports to architecture. Or became an unlikely friend. He helped her navigate social customs while she helped him understand human history. They studied together, ate meals together, and argued good-naturedly about philosophy and physics. Aura recovered from her injury and insisted on taking Sarah to see the sacred gardens. They walked through paths lined with flowers that glowed in the twilight, talking about their dreams and fears and hopes for the future. 6 months later, when it was time for Sarah to return to Earth, the entire campus gathered to say goodbye. Students she had never met came to thank her for changing how they saw humans. Professors presented her with academic awards. Walking on a repaired leg gave her a climbing medallion inscribed with words in both languages. "Strength is in the heart, not the body." Sarah stood at the shuttle platform, her pack on her back, looking at the faces around her. These were no longer aliens. They were friends, colleagues, people she would miss. "You'll come back?" Lee asked, their voice hopeful. "Of course," Sarah promised. "We have that paper to finish, and I still haven't beaten you at quantum chess." "You'll never beat me at quantum chess," Lee said, laughing. "Your probability calculations are terrible." "Then I'll just have to keep trying," Sarah said. The shuttle doors began to close. Through the window, Sarah watched the waving goodbye. Some wore human-style clothing now, a fashion trend that had started after the tower climb. Others held up signs with messages in English. One group of young students wore masks of her face, not demon faces, but friendly caricatures that made her laugh through her tears. As the shuttle lifted off, Sarah looked down at IV growing smaller below. The spiral tower was visible in the distance, a thin line reaching toward the sky. She had climbed it as a challenge and descended as something more. Not a demon, not a weapon, just a person, strong in her own way, learning to use that strength with wisdom. The stars waited ahead, full of other worlds, other people, other chances to prove that power and kindness were not opposites. That strength could build bridges instead of walls. Sarah settled into her seat, the medallion warm in her hand, and smiled. She had been afraid she would spend 6 months isolated and feared. Instead, she had found a second home, and she knew with certainty that this was just the beginning. For her, for humanity, for all the species learning to share the galaxy together. The universe was vast and full of differences, but maybe that was exactly what made it beautiful.